Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Omnia. Now today we have a returning character who is very hotly anticipated for both people who have him and those that don't due to their stellar call ability in Kurasame, and he's going to be joined by honestly one of those like low-key hype characters I've seen in a while, judging by conversations I've had with other people, etc. in Seifer, who is a character that I think is more popular than he lets on, with a very interesting kit that has delay in it and some very unique debuffs. So if you'd like to find out more about these two, as well as the event that joins them, then of course as always, stay tuned and keep on watching. Before we get started, don't forget to check out all of my social media links below, including Twitter, Twitch, Patreon, and Discord. While I was up last night about 2 AM, kind of contemplating life, and after obviously the failed pulls on Lael's LD I had recently, I threw a few extra tickets, and I did actually manage to get Lael's LD, which was a nice little kind of extra to the evening, which was quite pleasant. So if you see me using Lael's LD, you'll now know why. But with Twitch, obviously I stream 5 days a week, including DFFOO, Final Fantasy XIV, and my Final Fantasy count-up, which I will be continuing with very soon once I've finished FF5 for the first time, because we're going to be going back and doing 4-Job Fiesta, which will be really good fun. And of course I have my charity stream at the end of the month, which now has PayPal options added to it, because I contacted the charity yesterday and they were very happy about it. So if you wanted to have a look at the details for that, then feel free to check it out down below as well. With Patreon, I always shout out one of my patrons every time I release a brand new video, and today that person is going to be Silver Hawk, who is brand new to my Patreon, so thank you very, very much for joining us. And actually has Dart from Legend of Dragoon on their title card. So you don't necessarily have to have a Final Fantasy character as your character within the title cards that I make, especially for all of my patrons. So if you'd like one of those as well as other benefits, then perhaps you'd like to consider becoming a patron yourself. Of course, don't forget to check out all the other fantastic content creators there are out there for Dissidia Final Fantasy Omnia, and all of the resources that are around as well. So of course, as always, we're going to cover both of the characters, their abilities that get awakened, any new gears that we've got for them, and all sorts of things. But the banner itself is going to contain Lael's BT, as well as both Seifer and Kurasame's full kit, so their EX, their LDs, and everything else in between. And it's going to feature Edgar EX. Woo, that's a gold orb you really want to see at this point, right? But we're going to talk about Kurasame first. Now, Kurasame was always a very good character, and I do actually have a video all about Kurasame already existing if you want to know his base kit and everything that he does, but he revolves very heavily around his Hyoro debuff, which is an iced imperil that is also bundled in with an HP damage increase on the debuffed enemy. And this goes all the way up to 30%, so it's not something to sniff at, it's actually very powerful. But Kurasame was always quite weak himself, like his main skills didn't really do a lot except for like increase the Hyoro debuff, and if the enemies took a turn when they had maximum Hyoro stacks on the debuff, it'd then get reverted to 1 and you'd have to build them all back up again. Well, that hasn't really changed when it comes to Kurasame, but what he does get is some spectacular call abilities, and he obviously gets the LD board. Now, his LD board actually adds a significant amount to him, because it not only increases his attack, which is something he sorely needed because his potencies weren't the greatest. It increases the bravery hits on Absolute Zero, which is his LD attack, and it's a bigger 100% HP damage attack. He also gets a free skill use when he uses it, which is great because his skill usage stats weren't the best, and you wanted to take as much advantage of it because after he uses his EX, he gets a follow-up attack. So this actually like compounds his damage quite heavily, and he also gets more Brave Overflow. But the buff that you get from his LD, Warm Gaze, which was a party attack boost, etc., just offensive general boost, now gives you Ice Enchant for the party, as well as elemental weakness damage up, and more elemental weakness damage up for him. So he's going to be dealing a significantly larger amount of damage while still being able to maintain the Hyoro debuff and actually be more of a supporting role in that he enchants the party for his element that he's already imperiling and increasing their elemental weakness damage by a hard percentage. And as we well know, any kind of HP percentile damage increase is extremely powerful, especially amongst characters that use multiple HP attacks within any move that they do, because it's a direct percentile increase in everything that they do. So to have Hyoro on the enemies is very powerful. Now, with his EX, he also comes in and inflicts stacks of Hyoro to the enemies just by coming in. So now that he has cool abilities, you're able to kind of inflict Hyoro with both of his calls, kind of ignoring everything that his calls actually do. It's really, really powerful, and it's something that gets used to this day in JP. So by him having Iceblade Renzan as his regular call, it increases the active Hyoro stacks by 1, so you're getting 3 stacks just by using this, which is, it's nice, but it's like, you can kind of go about it 2 ways. You can either, if you're going for a massive bursty damage phase, you could use his call and then his LD call straight after, just to get 5 stacks on your target straight away, but it's not going to last as long, and it does tick up after each enemy turn anyway, so you can kind of just extend the lifespan of the Hyoro debuff by using the calls differently, but you have the option if you want to push it just to do both. But the call effects as well, like the regular call effect only affects you for Enchant Ice, but the LD call ability gives Enchant Ice and weakness damage up like it does for the actual version of itself to the entire party, on top of the fact that you're getting the Hyoro debuff. So honestly, it's like Kryl and Ignis had a baby. Like it's very powerful, and that HP damage up is exceptional. So it's something that I think a lot of players of, like myself, who have Kurasame are very excited to get their hands on. And if you don't already have Kurasame, that call ability is worth looking at by itself. So now let's have a look at Seifer and see what kinds of things he has to offer. Now Seifer is a very strange character that's kind of always flown under the radar every time he's been released. And honestly, looking at future clears for videos, I'll be honest and I say I don't see Seifer very often. He's not a character that loads of people have gone out of their way for, but looking at his kit and having conversations with various players, and you'll see this when we get to the Would You Pull section of the video, there are people who absolutely sing his praises and really love Seifer and really think that he works well in a lot of situations. So let's take a look at the kit and see exactly why people are on either side of the fence. So if you've not used him before, Seifer is a damage dealer slash debuffer and an offensive debuffer primarily, in that he does debuffs that reduce their attack, their max bravery, and their bravery damage in general. Now, No Mercy is a wind-based AoE bravery single target HP with splash damage attack that gives him the buff Sorceress's Knight, which gives him access to his bravery and HP pluses alongside his EX buff, makes it so his offensive stats go up, and makes it so that his debuffs always go off, because when he first came out, they didn't. So that's what that does. It also inflicts attack down, which is the 30% attack down. Nice debuff. Bloodfest, similarly, is a AoE Brave HP attack that's not tied to an element. That allows him to get the same buff, and it also gives him some max bravery, and it also inflicts max bravery down, which is the 40% of debuff. Also quite nice. Nothing too revolutionary. His C65 is set defense down, which sets a 40% defense down, which is actually very good, as we'll see with his LD and his high armor as well, because it compounds into a very heavy defense debuff as and when you need it, which is quite nice. And then his EX has a very interesting set of abilities. So it inflicts the Scar of Destruction debuff, which, as you can see here, reduces their speed, but also for 1 turn makes it so that any bravery damage the enemy deals is 0. And this can actually be very powerful in the right hands, and his LD makes it so that you're likely to get this off more frequently, and that's a thing in and of itself. It's also a double HP dump attack, which is very nice. It works, for any kind of, this day and age works well with Kurasame, any kind of percentile buffs. It also gives him another frame buff, and he only actually requires 2, which is quite nice. It means he plays very well with other buffers, such as Ash, etc. That increases his attack, increases extends the duration of any existing buffs he's got, and it also makes his damage go up by 10% for every debuff the target has, which in this day and age of having up to 8 debuffs can actually be very powerful. So he does have these multi-HP dumping moves. He does also have an HP++ that comes off of having both of his buffs, but it's not the greatest. It's a 2-hit AoE Bravery HP attack, which is split damage, which is useful given what his LD does. But you shouldn't need to use this too frequently, but it might come in handy. His LD, on the other hand, is very interesting and unique in that it kind of turns him into Garland. So by being unique, it's not really unique. It turns him into Garland, basically. It gives him a buff called Purge, which gives him more attack, more HP damage up, and more max brave overflow. And whenever he's attacking a debuffed target, particularly with the debuff that this LD grants, it delays the enemy by a turn. So it means he's got AoE attacks that can delay the enemies ad nauseum, similarly to how Garland can do it. But because Seifer has splash damage and split damage on his kit, he's more able to do AoE delays than even Garland can. But the setback with this is that they have to be afflicted with the foul debuff, and he has to have the purge buff up as well. He gets 4 uses out of it though, and the buff on him lasts for 7 turns, and the debuff lasts for up to 4. So it's fine, because as you're delaying a lot, the more you delay, the more you're likely to be able to use his EX, which is making it so you're not taking brave damage from their next attack. So you're kind of pushing their turns back in order to be able to use that EX ready for the next attack. So it actually does kind of work out very well. Now, as well as this, he does actually have like a weird thing, which I noticed on Reddit, which he came about with on JP, but I don't know whether he'll come about with this. But there was a bug that allowed him to like delay by extra turns depending on what attacks he was using, whether he was using splash damage or split damage. So it was coded weirdly that it was delaying them by 2 turns instead of 1, because his LD actually naturally debuffs by delays by 1 turn, as well as the fact that you get the purge and foul combination that delays again. So you're effectively delaying by 2 turns when you're using his LD and 1 turn when you're using his other moves. And it's good. It's very good. Like, if you want an alternative to Garland or you don't have Garland, then Seifer has this unique kind of debuffer, delayer, kind of weird mix of niches that he fills that makes him actually quite powerful. And he has multi-HP dumping attacks in his EX and his LD. He's got AoE damage. Like, none of it's 100% damage or anything like that. So, it's not Tifa levels of damage. But he does decent amounts, and he's certainly not bad at what he does. And I think that if you're wanting somebody who's a little bit different, the fact that Foul as well, like I said earlier, compounds with his C65 defense buff, gives sap, and it makes their brave gains go down by 30% as well. It means he's got, like I said, this very unique combination of offensive debuffs by stopping them dealing brave damage altogether with his EX, making their brave gains go down, reducing their attack, their max bravery. Like, he doesn't have any party-based auras or anything, but he does contribute to the party by way of delaying the enemies frequently and by making these brave attacks do nothing. Because if you're using him in combination with the right characters, that EX is going to go off, and it's going to make it so that their next turn is practically muted, unless they're like massive brave gains, at which point you can take other characters to kind of compound the brave gains that he stops. So while he's not a mandatory character by any means, like I said, a lot of future clears I watch for, over in the JP side, don't actually use Seifer all that often. But looking at his kit, he is actually pretty interesting, and he's actually very cool. Now, Seifer actually has very good cool abilities too, on the back of his LD board, which gives him the Purge buff and inflicts foul when he comes in, which means that you're getting the delay from his attacks because you have the buff and the debuff present, which is great. Bloodfest itself is kind of meh, but you're still getting those debuffs by coming in, etc., and it works. So you're getting an extra max bravery down, and you're getting everything else that you would out of it. And then the actual cool ability for Purge itself is actually very good because you're getting the delay off from it, as well as having access to the Purge and Foul delay. So you're actually getting extra delay out of it as well. So when he comes in, he's got Purge, he inflicts Foul for 2 turns or for 4 turns on all targets. So you can use that and then take advantage of the effects that you're getting from that as well. So you're getting the Brave gains down, the defense down, the sap. You're getting all of that stuff and you're getting the delay out of it. So it's actually a very strong cool ability as well. So honestly, I think that Seifer could be like a bit of an underdog when it comes to this game. Like, a lot of people, like I said, I haven't seen loads of videos that use him. I know he's going to be getting his level 90 and his EX buff very soon. I'll be very interested to see what comes out of that over in JP. But as it stands, I definitely think he's better than people think he is, or like at least the lack of clear as maybe think he is. Perhaps it's because you have to rely on the fact that you have a buff and they have a debuff, or that come off of his LD. So if you're against enemies that are cleansing themselves or dispelling you or anything like that, then it's gonna hamper him. It is gonna be a problem. He does also have wind damage in his kit, which is a thing. Like if the enemy absorbs wind, it's gonna hurt him. It's definitely not something you want to see. Now when it comes to armor, Kurasame has the Unity Keystone, which I love. He was one of the first characters that got the high armor, and I definitely picked it up then. When it comes to his like high armor plus and like making his armor blue, it's really good. It's 10% to both bravery and HP limits on the party, which I really like. But given how rare HA plus is and how rare the resources are to make blue armor, because Kurasame will over time kind of be used more as a cool ability than in your main party, which is not a read, he's very, very good as a cool ability. But because of that, I just don't feel that you need to go in all in with the resources and make his armor blue, because, well, you don't need to. And any excuse to kind of save those resources is great. And then I feel the same way about Seifer's armor. Although I do love his regular high armor being Tactics Keystone, because it reduces off all of your enemies' like stats in combination with the stats he already reduces. And if you've got his C65 and his foul debuff on, that's 80% defense down already. And then having defense down by 20% again means it's 100% defense down without really trying, or when you need it, you just use the C65 and get it. And then max bravery and attack also compounds well with the debuffs he gets from his skill 1 and 2. It just pans out nicely. And I do think the Seifer's armor, blue armor, is good, because if you've got all those debuffs on the enemies, you're gonna be capping out on damage more often than not, particularly if you've got good support lines, alongside him. I personally wouldn't be, but that's because I'm not actively chasing after Seifer. Like, I have Garland, I have characters that can do defensive buffs like Seifer, which is why I think a lot of people may have pushed him to the side. But he has such a unique combination of skills. Like, no one thing he does is super unique, but the combination of the stuff he has is quite unique. So he is very interesting and a very cool character to have. And like I said, we don't know what his EX and C90 are going to do, or the extensions on those. So that's going to be really interesting to see. So if that comes out before Seifer's leaves in global version, maybe that will be a reason to want to pick him up as well. But a lot of people I know are very hyped for him. And while I don't think he's mandatory, I'm starting to see why. So now let's take a look at the event that comes out with Kurasame and Seifer. And honestly, this is an event that asks you to delay the enemy. It's part of the orb. There's no like major punishment for not letting the enemies take a turn. So generally speaking, when an event asks for delaying an enemy, the best strategy you could possibly have is to not let the enemy get a turn whatsoever. So if you've got your Garland, now's a great time for you to use it. If you've got Seifer, then having Seifer alongside Garland, or even Tifa, who can just spam turns like crazy. Lael delays. There's lots of Aranea delays. Lightning even. There's nothing huge that you have to really worry about when it comes to this fight if you're not letting the enemy take a turn. If they target themselves, the idea behind this fight is that they put up an aura that reduces any HP damage they take. So what you're supposed to do is bring Kurasame along to counter that and make it so that HP damage, doesn't really go down all that much. But why bother doing that? Because they have to get a move in order to put that on themselves. And if you don't let them do that, then they don't get the HP reduction. So honestly, I personally am of the opinion that if you've got a way of making it so the enemies never get a turn, then why make it too difficult for yourself? Just do that. And if you don't want to do that, then yes, there's plenty of mechanics that you could be looking at. Like, you just want to make sure that you keep yourself kind of, healthy, make sure they don't break you. They have really nasty attacks after they hit like the halfway point. But like I said, the game is actively asking me to stop the enemies from taking any turns. So that's what I'm going to do. So now we come to the should you pull portion of the video, of course. Now, this is probably going to be a bit of a hot take for a lot of people, but even though Porum is like the one that everyone is looking out for, as somebody who very, very highly values call abilities that have a massive amount of longevity, I would argue that if you don't have Kurasame, you should probably pull here first. Like, you know, I think that Porum is incredible, and I'm gonna go over that when it comes to her video. But Kurasame's call ability is very unique. It's like, it doesn't come back again for a long time, if like as far as I'm aware at least, and he's going to last you a really long time in a similar way, if not more so, than Jack did. And everyone who I've ever spoken to who didn't pull on Jack has told me they regretted not doing it. So I think that on the back of Kurasame alone, if you have neither of these characters, this banner is an absolute win. Particularly if you're a new player. If you're a new player, it's a fantastic banner. You're getting a solid damage dealer in Seifer, if you get him, who also happens to bring along delay, you know, ways of defending your party through his EX, debuffing, and like just delaying in general. It's a strong mechanic to get you caught up. If you don't have Garland, for example, he's fantastic in general, and his call abilities are actually really good as well. And Kurasame is a fantastic support character for this point in the game, that even when you're not using him so much, you're gonna want to use that call ability a lot. So if you don't have either of these characters, I think the banner is an absolute win. If you already have Kurasame, I'm wrestling with this banner a fair amount, because as much as I think Seifer is really cool, really fun, really interesting, has loads of really cool niches that all go together, ultimately, especially if you have Garland, you probably find you don't need to use him. Like, he's really, really cool, and he does things that allow you to make interesting and fun combinations of characters. Like, he's an LD based damage dealer that does a decent amount of damage, has the delay, gives you a nice alternative to Garland if you do have him even. But you have to ask yourself, how often are you actually going to use Seifer? If the answer is, I will use him a lot in future events, and it doesn't bother me that there are certain events that he might get locked out of because maybe the enemy cleanses themselves of debuffs a lot, then absolutely go for him. But in all of the research that I've conducted, I'll be honest, I don't see Seifer all that much. I would love to, because I think that on paper, he's got a very interesting combination of abilities. And I think that if people want to use him, they can. He just kind of has a lot of characters like him that, while they don't fulfill the same combination of niches he does, you can kind of separate them into the niches that you need for that given point. So if you want a damage dealer who has delay in their kit, you're gonna take Garland. Like, he doesn't have AoE damage in the same way that Seifer does, but he also doesn't rely on external means in the same way Seifer does. And he has a burst, which is exceptional. Like, I mean, you can use them both together, of course, but then you only have one slot left for auras and party buffs and things like that. That being said, I do think there are certain characters that I think Seifer goes really well with, Ashe being one of them. Ashe is a really great partner for him. Because you get the Enchant in Peril, you get the instant charge EX, which is really nice for him. There is a lot of characters I think are really fun to use with Seifer. So it all depends on your current position in the game. If you have neither of them, absolute win. If you're just looking for Seifer, personally, I'd wait and see how Porum goes. Possibly Cloud of Darkness as well, because they're the next banners that are coming up that we know of. There may even be surprises at the end of the month. So just pull with caution is all I'll say there. And then finally, it's time for Would You Pull, a section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to have your voice heard and let everyone know whether you would or wouldn't pull on any given banner and why. This one is interesting. It is the most evenly matched poll I've ever done on this channel. And it's really surprised me, because I would have thought a lot more people would have said no than they have. But I think that, and it's all about Seifer too. Like, there's very few people who commented, and a big thank you, of course, goes out to all of my patrons for casting their votes and comments. And if you would like the full database of the comments here, then perhaps you'd like to consider joining up as well, as I can only post so many comments per video. But I'm just going to tell you the numbers, and then we'll go into it from there. 27% of people said they were going to spend gems here. 24% said they were going to spend 100 or more tickets. 24% said that they were going to spend less than 100 tickets. 24% said no. I am in the camp that I'm probably not going to pull here. Like, I think Seifer's really cool, but I already have Kurasame, and I like Garland enough that I would use a different sort of party composition whenever I would need Seifer. But I am not, like, that is not necessarily the popular opinion. Going into some of the comments, so Nick here says, going in with gems. I missed out on Kurasame's kit the first time, and after seeing his usefulness in clearing high-level content, I want to be sure to get his kit now, especially for that cool ability. I don't know much about Seifer's skills, and I don't see him used in co-ops, but if I get good pulls with Kurasame, then I might keep going for Seifer's kit too. So I do think that if you have neither of them, in my personal opinion, depending on whatever else you have, if you get Kurasame first, I would stop. And then go for your Porum, your Cloud of Darkness. Luckily, we have a Divine board coming with Cloud of Darkness, and lots of rumor mills about August and what's happening on the Global First front and stuff like that, as always. Just be aware of everything else that's coming after this, because there's a lot. Arzoros Fire says, easy skip for me. I already have Kurasame's kit from the first time around. I'm not willing to risk pulling a Kurasame LD dupe just for Seifer. He doesn't bring enough to the table for me to warrant pulling for him personally, especially given what's around the corner. Porum is insane. Cloud of Darkness is insane. They are both characters I'm going to be spending gems on, and I'm sure I'm not alone on it, as we'll see with these polls going forward. So while I think that Seifer's really cool and a lot of people really love him, he's not a character you necessarily need. So that's my opinion at the very least. And my opinion isn't always, like, you know, the same as everybody else's, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Kobolzork said, I loved Seifer back on his EX Plus release. He's one of those characters you need to play intelligently to get the most out of his belter of an EX debuff without wasting turns or burning through too many skills to avoid those powerful attacks. Yes, there are other characters who achieve a similar result, but not with the same mix of debuffs. His LD adding delay makes him an interesting prospect once again. I have Kurasame built already, but if not, I'd be pulling for him. That Hyoro debuff is super strong both in team or as the cool version, and getting Party Enchant only adds to his usefulness. It'll be tickets from me. Skipping a banner because it's got an LD you already have is a false economy. Your chance of getting the LD you want is no different to a banner not having that second LD featured. I find this comment really interesting based on the last one, because there's two very, very different mentalities. So I'm really interested in the comments below. Let me know whether you are more put off by a banner if you already have something on it, or if it doesn't phase you and you continue to go for the one that you want. So for example, in this banner, if you have Kurasame, are you still going to go for Seifer? Would you have gone for Seifer if perhaps it was a different LD featured? I find it just a psychological interest, and I think it's interesting to see how other people do it. Because it doesn't necessarily phase me. If I'm after one thing, getting anything else is like, that's gravy. And if it's like, you know, I mean, when it comes to Agrius, I don't have Theodore right now, but if I were to get Agrius, I probably wouldn't continue. Well, I might do now that he's had his EX, his 90 and his BT. But anyways, you know, you see what I mean. There's a different mentality that goes behind each banner, and I'm curious as to what you guys think. And then finally, Doc Shootem says, I'll cut to the chase. If you have neither of these characters, this banner is 100% gem worthy. As somebody with Kurasame already, I'm still going gems. That's how much I believe in it. Seifer has a Frankenstein's monster of a kit, a bunch of different things he can do separately that handle some really weird orb conditions. His ability to hit weakness damage on enemies that are just debuffed means he can hit for weakness damage with just an enchanter, such as in Transcendence 5. His debuff strengths are all additive with very few framed and applies them very regularly, including starting with his EX that reduces incoming brave damage to 0. I didn't actually mention that earlier when talking about Seifer, but he does actually start with his EX charged, so you're able to get the recast off on it very regularly, and one of the things I like about him most is the fact that because all of his skills have delay in them now, he's more likely to get the recharge of his EX like within the 1 turn duration of the debuff lasting, and that's kind of cool because it kind of makes it continuous. And is it necessary? Probably not, but it's really cool. And then he applies them very regularly with oncoming brave damage going to 0. Now with the added delay, Seifer makes a mean call too, applying debuffs and delaying. All told, his kit is better than the sum of its parts, and he's a character who can get actual effective main party use well into December and beyond. When the going gets tough and you need a specialist call in Seifer, you won't be disappointed, but you may be surprised. I will say this now. I wasn't interested in Seifer all that much because I didn't see him getting used very much, because I didn't see a lot of people making buzz about it. But when I started talking to people like who feel passionately about him, the way in which people kind of felt so strongly about it did make me kind of go, oh, maybe I've overlooked this, and maybe he's better than like I've given him credit. Because I already had Kurasame, I was like, excellent, easy skip for me, no problems. But now that people are kind of talking about it, I'm at least interested. But I'm still going to stand steadfast. If I do spend tickets, it's not going to be very many, because for me, Porum and Cloud of Darkness comes first. It's not about whether Seifer's great, because he probably is. It's about those two for me first and foremost. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think. So that's going to be all for today's video. As I just said, let me know in the comments below whether you're pulling for Kurasame, whether you're pulling for Seifer, whether you're saving for Porum and Cloud of Darkness, whether you're saving for something completely different, or whether you're just going all in on gems on every banner and somehow coming out with everything. Like I said, I'm probably not going to pull, at least initially, but I'm interested in Seifer. So let me know what you guys think of it. Of course, thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to follow subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitch or on any other social medias, like the video, and just, thank you very much for coming around and sticking around and watching, and that's going to be it from me. So I shall see you guys soon, and the next event will be Porums and DE Transcendence 3, which is going to come along with the Triple Burst banner as well, which is another one that's going to be very interesting, and that's going to be it. So thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care.